And just say at the outset, I'm going to talk a little bit about guns. And I'm a Canadian, and the vast majority of Canadians, and honestly, the vast majority of non-Americans globally do not understand the American gun culture. The fact that there are, what, 350 million guns in America, and that access to firearms, despite the horrific carnage that they exert upon a civilian population every year, the unquestioned fidelity to that is hard for me to understand, meaning I don't understand it. And what's even harder for me to understand is Christians who downplay the evil of guns and the carnage that they wreak upon civilian society. One thing I've pointed out before is to become effective at using a firearm, you have to not only train with it, develop the muscle memory, you have to train to overcome the aversion to kill other human beings. And to some degree, it seems to me there's something deeply malformative about that whole exercise with respect to Christian discipleship, to training yourself to kill other people. Now, there are circumstances where that is a necessity of the job, right? If you want to be in the military or a police officer, for example, that kind of training is necessary. But for people who want to train with a weapon, with a firearm, shooting targets that are in the shape of human beings in order to train themselves to inflict lethal damage on other human beings, there's something malformative about that. And I'm concerned time and again then with the way that, in particular, evangelicals are so embracing of this gun culture, which to my mind is fundamentally contrary to what Pope John Paul II beautifully described as an Evangelium Vitae, or a gospel of life, a comprehensive understanding of the Christian gospel that understands it as embracing all life, not just, as evangelicals are really well known for, fetal life or unborn human beings. Okay, so then I come to this tweet from Wendell. The tweet is he's tweeting reference to an article. The article says that America wants to ban porn, but not fully automatic weapons. And I take it the gist of the argue of the article here is to show the irony of this juxtaposition, to say not that you shouldn't be banning or certainly regulating porn, which I agree is a bane on society. It's terrible and very harmful. It's not that you shouldn't be doing that, it's that how can you do that and not do something similar when it comes to access to weapons, to firearms, and particularly to semi or fully automatic weapons? Wendell, there's no sense of shared recognition of this. Yes, we should regulate or ban guns and, in particular, fully automatic weapons because of the incredible harm that they wreak upon a civilian population. Instead, he simply says this: porn is far more dangerous than any weapon. And I want to just camp on that comment and on that opinion for a little while. So, first of all, a quick introduction to Wendell. Wendell is a pastor and a Twitter personality. He's got a decent sized bully pulpit of 44,000 followers, which is probably about 9 times, 8 times the number of followers I have. He describes himself as the country preacher. Uh, Wendell is, in my experiences with him over the years, I've had several exchanges with him. He's a genuinely nice person. He's not one of these toxic Christian fundamentalists, of which there are many. But I would say he's a Christian fundamentalist. I think he'd be happy to call himself a Protestant fundamentalist, but he's a genuinely nice person. And that's always something to keep in mind. But I want to talk about this idea that porn is more dangerous than any weapon. When I was a kid, 50, almost 50 years ago, I mean, I'm 52. So let's say 45 years ago or whatever, the idea was sometimes you might find your buddy would find Playboy magazines behind the wood pile that his dad had hid there or something like that. So I want to just go with that image. Imagine that there's a group of like 10, 12-year-old boys, and they find a pornographic magazine behind the woodpile. I think that that is harmful. It's dangerous. It has an adverse impact upon those young boys, upon forming their understanding of women and of healthy relationships and of masculinity and all sorts of things. It is harmful. Which would be worse? Which would be more dangerous, more negatively impactful for them to have found those pornographic magazines, or let's say Donald Trump, who's not the sharpest pencil in the drawer. Let's say Donald Trump misplaced a button with the nuclear codes that would launch a nuclear weapon in the neighborhood or detonate a nuclear weapon, let's say, in the neighborhood. Which would be more dangerous to those boys? For them to discover the pornographic magazine or this nuclear weapon that they can detonate? I mean, I think the comparison is absurd myself. I think obviously the nuclear weapon is more dangerous. So it seems to me that Wendell is just wrong when he says porn is far more dangerous than any weapon. Obviously, there are weapons that are more dangerous than a pornographic magazine. Now, I've highlighted here fully automatic weapons to say this. Okay, maybe I'm being unfair to Wendell. Maybe he's engaged in some hyperbole, and the context here is not nuclear warheads, but guns in particular. And fully automatic, but let's say also semi-automatic guns, again, AR-15s, etc. Let's say that is the context, so that we're being uncharitable to Wendell. And what he's really saying is not that porn is more dangerous than any nuclear warhead, but porn is more dangerous than any gun. So let's run the scenario again. The 10 or 12-year-old group of 10 or 12-year-old boys, would you rather they discover the pornographic magazine or an AR-15 loaded behind the woodpile? Which would be more dangerous? And again, I think it's an absurd comparison. It's an absurd question. The AR-15 would be more dangerous than the magazine. It says not again. It's not to say pornographic magazines are not dangerous, that porn is not dangerous, that the porn industry is not harmful. It is terribly harmful. And there are all sorts of ways I think it should be regulated. Um, but the gun does not get an exemption here. It is far more dangerous. And if it's far more dangerous to those kids, how much more grounds do you have to regulate it? And this is why Wendell's comment shows this laissez-faire, lackadaisical, accepting attitude to American gun culture that I think is profoundly counter to Evangelium Vitae, or a comprehensive gospel of life, which should be at the center of every Christian proclamation. Okay, I want to show you a clip from um, an exchange that Aaron Burnett on CNN had with a medical doctor who deals with gun injuries. This is from just 2023, after one of countless mass shootings in the US, where they talk about the damage that is done by an AR-15. Just look at the ticker tape or whatever, the description on the bottom here. Um, AR-15 has been used in 96 mass shootings in 10 years. Try to put your minds around the impact of a gun like this upon the human body, the damage that it exerts.
We have an animation, Doctor, that I want to show you that the Washington Post put together. It shows the trajectory of a 223 caliber sized round fired from an AR-15. And the bullet enters the body and then bursts into the chest cavity. Can you just explain for our viewers what this rifle actually does to the human body?
Sure. These high velocity firearm injuries, such as the AR-15 that you're showing, creates devastating wounds. Big body cavities are seen if the victim makes it to the trauma center alive. And really, most patients have no time to bleed. You can bleed to death in as little as 5 minutes. And so, with the type of wound that's created, most people will not make it to a hospital, let alone a trauma center, alive. Those that do.
All right, we could go on. But I think that we all know, I hope, that how incredibly dangerous and impactful the wounds from a gun like an AR-15 are, let alone a fully automatic weapon. How weapons like this can pulpify human beings within seconds. To compare that to a pornographic magazine or a post image or even a short video from an OnlyFans account or something like that, to update my analogies a little bit or my illustrations. Uh, to compare that and say that no, that magazine or that post from the OnlyFans account would wreak more damage on those 10 or 12-year-old boys than the AR-15 or a fully automatic weapon, I think is just delusional. Now, in fairness, I mean, it could be that I think there are a couple factors here maybe at play. One is somebody like, well, I think that evangelicals, I'm not going to talk about Wendell, but I'll just say evangelicals generally, they not only are they accepting of gun culture, they also elevate quote unquote sexual sins and sin of lust as above other sins. And this sort of this there's a historic focus within evangelicalism on a short list of sexual sins as sort of being the very worst of sins. And that could be part of what's going on here. That and the other thing would be there's a conflation maybe that or that Wendell or people like him are saying, look, okay, the AR-15 can hurt the body, but pornography hurts the soul, something like that, maybe. Maybe there's like some kind of rationale there as to why they think porn is more dangerous than an AR-15. And I just think, I just think that's absurd. I think that really what this creates, whatever the underlying rationale for the way that people like Wendell think, whatever it may be, what it creates, again, is a laissez-faire, lackadaisical attitude toward civilian, suburban weapons of mass destruction that kill thousands of people in the United States every year and wound and maim thousands of people and just create a ripple effect of trauma throughout society that destroys countless lives. And to speak in that when you profess to endorse or to hold a gospel of life, and you have that laissez-faire, lackadaisical attitude toward the evil of gun culture, I think it's just an indictment upon your Christian witness. So we can talk about regulating porn, banning porn, and along the way defining porn, because that's critical. How do you define it? Of course, that's an ongoing subject matter of debate. You can talk about all those things and they're important, but don't make absurd claims that guns are somehow less dangerous than pornographic magazines, because that, to my mind, is just a fundamental distortion of the reality, which again claims as victims thousands and thousands of people every year. And along the way, with the silence and complicity of the evangelical church, which only serves to discredit that church's witness to a skeptical world.